true. Parents around the country are very upset about the allegations of sexual abuse, some of them actually proven as fact in some of our daycare centers. In fact, in Massachusetts alone, currently the Office for Children have started investigations in no less than 33 daycare centers since September. Startling. Last night, ABC's 2020 aired a report that for the first time showed children speaking about this, speaking to the issue on camera. And the questions are many. One is, if these children knew and were in fact involved in sexual acts and sexual abuse for this length of time, why was it kept a secret for so long? ABC's Tom Jarriel joins us right now to take your phone calls. And Tom, let me tell the audience that the reason we're opening the phones is to find out what opinions may be on using children on camera to talk about this issue. Thank you for flying up this morning.
Certainly.
How did you come upon this story? This is alleged that the McMartin School, that many of their teachers were involved in sexual abuse, right?
This, of course, is where it all began as far as the allegations against nursery schools, and this probably remains the biggest case. 200 cases against 7 former teachers. And it, of course, was in the media before, and we went out and did one story there last summer. We got to know the parents, and we talked to them for many hours at night, and these are people in anguish. These are people whose lives have been just torn apart because they couldn't believe that their children could be even involved in such allegations. But they know it now, and they suspect they're true, and they want to do something. They said, we asked, could we interview some of your children? And they said, we'll talk to them and we'll see, get back to us. Weeks passed, months passed, and they said, we liked the first story, come back and we'll see what we can do.
Tom, can I ask you, what is the purpose of last night's piece? As naive a question as that may seem, what were you trying to get across to us?
2 things. One, to put some impact into what we see as a national problem, child abuse. People say, why use the kids? It is to add impact and to add information, and it also is to hopefully let people know that this wasn't just hugging and fondling and holding hands and slapping kids on the wrist. These kids are making very heavy and serious allegations on a wholesale basis against this school. As a parent, I had no idea that this type of thing might be going on between adults and kids on such a broad scale, maybe an isolated case of perversion somewhere.
Actually, lots of responsibility went into the decision to have children on camera. In fact, the ABC owned and operated station general manager in LA said,
yes.
No way will we air this.
That was not a policy made for our program. That was a policy made to protect themselves against their own news operation. They saw our piece and said, that's a very responsible piece. If we didn't already have this policy in place not to put kids on television, we would air your report. They were protecting themselves against a live minicam with an aggressive interviewer doing an ambush interview on a child in a hallway and suddenly it appearing on the air and them being embarrassed and hurting the kid perhaps.
Which no one can denounce. I mean,
right.
That's a good policy.
But it was a half-baked policy. Had they done it and said, look, journalistic guidelines have been set, you do not identify children who are victims of crime or who have committed crimes. It's been a long-established process. We very carefully conceal their identities.
The mere fact that those children knew that there were cameras in the room, or perhaps that should be the question, did they know?
During our interviews?
Piece.
First of all, the parents had to agree that the children could be interviewed. Second, the children had to agree that they wanted to be interviewed. Third, the parents could stop the interviews at any time during the period. And fourth, the kids could at any time stop the interviews. And finally, the ground rules we were more than glad to agree to. If after the interview was over, the kids had said something that they regretted, that they felt bad about, that they felt wasn't exactly true or accurate, they could then retract what they said.
Let's see what our viewers have to say. Tom, good morning. You're on Good Day.
Hello.
Good morning.
Yeah, besides school, what about, I have a son that was assaulted by a male and a female babysitter.
Would you do me a favor? Would you repeat that? I think we missed the first part.
I have a son that was assaulted by a male and a female babysitter, all right? And he was 4 years old and had to go to court over this thing and face his peers. I think that's an awful trauma for a child to have to go through. I really do. I was in court with him, and I really did not appreciate it. I'm divorced from my wife, and I right now have custody of my son. I don't think it was very right for him.
Did you watch 2020 last night?
Yes, I did.
What did you think about the
I
children?
thought it was very well done, and I really think that with 7 lawyers having, these children have to face 7 lawyers, I think it's too much for them. I really do.
Of course, so this raises the issue that Ken Kashawahara dealt with in the piece that followed. Tom, speak to that, Tom, if you can. That whole
it is
issue
one of the toughest issues we now face. We've recognized child abuse as a problem. Now the problem is, how do you have children testify under the intimidating conditions of a courtroom with adult defense lawyers who can take them apart because they are small, they are impressionable. How do you make these credible witnesses? A similar child abuse case in Jordan, Minnesota went exactly to this problem. They had allegations against a number of people in the community, but when they got the kids on the stand, they were destroyed by the defense lawyer simply because they were children. This is a problem. It may require reform, it may require new legislation, it may require new techniques of interviewing kids.
I was going to ask you, Tom, as a man, as a father, as a reporter, how do you personally prepare, deal with these kinds of issues? Because you too could have been accused of saying you are re-victimizing these children by forcing them to live through it again, as we know with rape cases, again and again that happens.
You deal with it very, very cautiously, very sensitively, because again, these kids, we knew what they had been through. I was amazed at how open they were. I think what's surprising is the kids may be more prepared to talk about this than the adults, myself, you, or especially the parents are.
We have a second clip, and in all fairness, we should air it, because this is one of the teachers, I suppose, that speaks to the allegations that the children said happened last night. So let's take a look at the second clip from ABC's 2020.
And we underlined alleged here.
Can you imagine? I can't. A small child being exposed to such brutality. Can you see a child that had been exposed to this complete and utter terror walking calmly out the gate and coming back again and keeping it secret?
They showed us pictures of bodies that were burned alive, and they said, this is what's going to happen to you and the rest of your family if you tell.
No outrage shown in that teacher.
That was Betty Rader. She's the senior teacher there.
What are your personal feelings, Tom? I mean, as Tom Cottle just said, alleged, we have to underline that because nothing's been proven, but as you met these teachers, what were your feelings?
She was the only one who agreed to do an interview of the 7 accused. She is everyone's grandmother. I have not met a more pleasant, more solid pillar of the community. Her neighbors rallied around her with cookies and coffee while we were there interviewing her. She did not put any stipulations or ground rules on the interview and answered every question and denied guilt throughout.
How did you feel personally?
Very confused because when you see a woman like that and you hear from the children and stories the children have told their parents what she is alleged to have done, it is mind-boggling. But let me point out, not necessarily with her, child abusers can be anywhere, they can be everywhere, and they frequently are very upstanding members of the community.
Or the family.
In Indianapolis, we had a case of the best friend of the family was giving tickets to a couple so that they would go to basketball games so he could slip into the house and abuse their child.
Yeah. Doctors, attorneys,
this was an attorney.
Someone else wants to speak with you, Tom. Good morning, you're on Good Day.
Good morning. Well, I have to congratulate 2020. Wonderful show they put on. And too bad it was 20 years, it wasn't 20 years ago that this has happened. I wanted to say the physical abuse, when that ends, now that's all done. It's the mental abuse that a lot of these children, if they don't get the help they need when they're young, 20 years from now, they're going to be a walking mess of insecurities.
Were you a victim?
Yes.
I could hear it in your voice.
All
right, then let me ask you, would this have helped you when you were a child if you had seen something like this?
Oh, yeah, a whole lot. I'll tell you, I'm in my 30s now. I'm sure there's many people out there that are in their 30s that were victims. And I think I'm just starting to conquer it maybe a year ago. I didn't know what was wrong with me, you know? I never thought it was sexual abuse.
Well, I think just in the mere fact of airing all of this, it at least makes parents so much more aware of some of the signs and some of the horrors that can happen. I thank you very much for the call.
We thank you. There's another phone call. Let's take another phone call. Good morning. You're on Good Day.
Hello.
Hello.
I just wanted to say that I think the show was really good, but I disagree with showing the children on TV. I think the show only serves to further exploit those children who are already a victim of tragedy. It's one thing to report a terrible car accident, but it's another thing to show the bloody bodies and the wounds in public. I think that should be left to be private. I think there were probably some people out there who watched and found some sort of pleasure in listening to those kids tell their story, and it was.
That's always possible. That's always possible.
This lady sounds very emotional.
Oh, I feel very strongly about it. It has not happened to me or my family, but anything to do with kids, it just gets me right in the heart, and I can imagine how those children felt. I
May I
don't
make-
empathize, I empathize.
All
May I
right.
make
That's a-
one
it's a
point
good
back
point.
to you?
Rejoinder, Tom.
And that is, these interviews were done months ago. They were done about 3 months ago. In the intervening period, we have stayed in contact with the parents and with the children. And without exception, the children, one, are glad they did the interviews, and two, say they feel better from having sat and talked about this subject.
We would, in a moment, we will repeat the list of what parents can look for. But one question, one criticism has been from some. These kids worked with anatomically correct dolls. They worked with people who brought out verbiage. They were very graphic in their description, Tom. Could it be that kids pick up on this and that there is a bit of fantasy that goes with this? I mean, speak to that.
The possibility that maybe the power of suggestion had been planted with them, is that
Right.
what you mean by the state therapist? The little girl who was in the clip, she's 3 years old. She was in that nursery when she was 2.5 until just recently. When I saw her, and we were told it's a bit of a gross story, but I'm going to tell you because it's in conjunction with this. We were pre-interviewing her mother, and we had a call from the babysitter. Said, get home right away. Your child is shoving a broom handle into her vagina. This little girl was the one that would speak in normal terms until you mentioned the school, and she would say one word. She would cloud over and she would say, death, death. That's all when you would try to talk to her about that school. I don't think anyone has planted that type of attitude or that type of thoughts in that little girl.
Tom, I want to ask you one quick question before we close with the things. I love what you did, and I salute ABC for doing it. If it happened, God forbid, to my child, I would not let her go on television. Would you let your child do that? And I'm glad you did it.
From knowing the impact of a program like this, and we've done it on a number of other subjects, from the importance of having this subject in the open, get it out, get rid of the taboos
You
we're talking
might.
about. I would, yes.
Well said.
We have a silent signal list for parents. It is ABC's. We repeat it now. Excessive crying, fear of adults, excessive nightmares, change in appetite, acting out behavior, and sexual language.
And it's the fear of adults
that
and...
maybe never used before.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Eileen. The fear of adults and the sexual language that you haven't heard before, those two stand out among this list of sexual abuse.
Don't let it go if you suspect. Do not. There is help out there, and thank you.